The tavern was alive with the clatter of mugs and the hum of voices, a mosaic of faces lit by the warm glow of lanterns swinging gently overhead. I sat at a worn wooden table, my lute resting lightly on my lap, fingers itching to touch the strings that carried the forbidden power nestled within the forgotten tune. Around me, the crowd was a sea of curious eyes and cautious whispers, a mingling of skepticism and awe. Tonight was no ordinary performance. Tonight, I would play a fragment of the melody I had unearthed, a piece so delicate and potent that it felt as if the air itself held its breath. As my fingers drew the first notes, the room hushed. The sound was fragile, like crystal threads weaving through the smoky air. It was a melody unlike any other, a lost language sung through vibrations and silence. The notes rose and fell, a spectral dance of power and sorrow. I could feel the magic thrumming beneath the surface, a subtle pulse that set nerves alight and hearts fluttering with unease. Then, from the crowd, a voice broke through the reverent silence. Eryndor, Talon's sneer was sharp and unmistakable, slicing through the melody like a discordant chord. You claim mastery over a tune you barely understand. The forgotten melody is no simple song to be trifled with. His eyes glinted with envy, a predator sizing his prey. The tavern seemed to hold its breath, the fragile tension thickening like a storm about to break. I met his gaze steadily, refusing to yield. It is no trifle, Talon, but I would caution you against jealousy. It clouds judgment and invites ruin. The words hung between us, a fragile truce suspended by unspoken challenges. Talon laughed, a low, bitter sound. We shall see, Bard, we shall see. The night wore on with a brittle tension, every glance and whispered word laced with the undercurrent of rivalry. After the crowd thinned and the tavern's warmth gave way to the chill of night, I retreated to the alley behind the building. The shadows clung to the walls like secrets, and the cold bit into my skin as I noticed Talon crouched near a pile of discarded papers, my manuscripts, scattered carelessly in my haste. His fingers moved deftly, copying the notes of the forgotten tune with a hunger that sent a cold shiver down my spine. The torchlight flickered, casting erratic shadows over his face, twisted in concentration and greed. I stepped forward, my heart pounding. Talon, I said quietly, but the weight of accusation was clear. He froze, eyes flashing with defiance and desperation. I only seek what is rightfully earned, he said, voice low but fierce. The tune is not a prize to be stolen, I replied. It is a burden and a curse. His expression faltered for a moment, revealing a glimpse of doubt beneath the bravado. Then perhaps it is you who does not understand its true cost. The encounter left a bitter taste, a reminder that the melody's power attracted not only awe but envy and danger. I knew then that I must guard not only the tune, but the fragile trust of those around me. Back at camp, Leora's presence was a balm to my fraying nerves. Her hands, strong and steady, moved over mine, checking for signs of strain and exhaustion. You push too hard, she said, her voice firm but gentle. This path will break you if you do not tread carefully. I met her gaze, grateful for her unwavering loyalty, yet burdened by the weight of my own ambition. I cannot stop now, I admitted. The melody calls to Met promises order where there is chaos, hope where there is despair. Leora's eyes softened, but her resolve remained unshaken. Then you must learn to protect yourself and the song from those who would see it twisted to ruin. Her words settled over me like a cloak, a reminder that I was not alone, yet the solitude of my burden deepened. The forgotten tune was no longer just a melody. It was a living force that pulled at the very fibers of my being. Later, As a storm raged outside, I sat alone in the tent, the flickering candlelight casting long shadows against the canvas. My lute lay across my knees, strings silent but humming with latent power. The melody whispered in my mind, a seductive promise and a haunting threat. I traced the contours of the notes, fingers trembling with a mixture of reverence and fear. Could I truly wield this power without losing myself? Could I protect the fragile balance between melody and fate? Or would I become another casualty in the deadly dance of music and ambition? The night deepened, and the storm outside mirrored the turmoil within. The forgotten tune was no longer just a song lost to time, it was the pulse of my destiny, and I was caught in its inexorable crescendo. And so, with a heart heavy but determined, I prepared for the trials ahead, knowing that every note played would draw me closer to either salvation or ruin. The grand hall was a tapestry of light and shadow, where banners fluttered softly in the gentle breeze that slipped through tall, narrow windows. Queen Iselda sat upon her throne with an air of measured grace, her silver blonde hair braided in the fashion of her ancestors, eyes sharp and alert beneath a calm visage. Around her, courtiers and counselors exchanged furtive glances, the murmur of whispered conversations knitting the room into a web of anticipation. I stood before them, lute in hand, the weight of countless expectations pressing on my shoulders. The forgotten tune lay dormant in my fingers, a fragile thread connecting past and present, power and peril. As my fingers brushed the strings, a hush settled over the hall. The first note slipped out, delicate and haunting, weaving through the space like a silken thread. The melody was not merely sound, it was a language lost to time, a symphony of ancient harmonies that spoke beyond words. The courtiers leaned in, caught in the spell, their expressions shifting from curiosity to something more profounder, subtle recognition of the tune's power. Queen Isilda's gaze remained steady, but I sensed the flicker of uncertainty beneath her composed exterior. This was no ordinary music. It was a force that could bind wills and unravel fates. As the melody unfolded, I felt it pulling at the very fabric of the room, weaving invisible threads that connected king and rebel, ally and foe. Each note was a stitch in a complex tapestry of influence, and I was both weaver and thread. The power was intoxicating, yet the toll it exacted whispered at the edges of my consciousness, reminder that every gift bore a price. After the performance, the room buzzed with quiet deliberation. Queen Isilda approached, her eyes meeting mine with a mixture of respect and caution. "The melody holds a potent sway," she said softly, "one that could bring peace or provoke war. We must tread carefully." Leora was at my side in an instant, her presence a steady anchor. "We'll need to strengthen our alliances," she murmured, voice low but firm. "The factions watching us won't hesitate to strike if they sense weakness." Later, in the shadowed corridors of the palace, we spoke in hushed tones, plotting a path through the labyrinth of court intrigue. Every alliance was a fragile thread, every word a potential snare. The tune's influence was a double-edged sword capable of bending wills, yet threatening to ensnare its wielder in a web of unseen consequences. That night, Melis appeared in my chamber as if summoned by the melody itself. Her silver hair shimmered faintly in the candlelight, eyes reflecting the starlit wisdom of ages. She spoke in riddles, deciphering patterns within the lost language embedded in the tune. "The melody is a map," she whispered, "of fate's delicate dance, each note a choice, each silence a turning. It binds us and frees us in equal measure. But beware, for the balance is fragile." Her words settled over me like a solemn vow. The tune was no mere weapon. It was a living thing, a harmony of destiny and desire that demanded respect. In the quiet hours before dawn, I wandered the palace gardens, the cool air carrying the scent of jasmine and earth. The fading light cast long shadows, mirroring the doubts and hopes tangled within me. The tune's refrain echoed softly in my mind, a haunting reminder of the path I had chosen. Could I navigate the intricate dance of power and sacrifice without losing my soul? Was it possible to wield the melody's magic and still find a way to rewrite my own fate? The threads of destiny were interwoven now, binding me to the kingdoms and rebels alike. The next move was mine, but the game was far from over. As the first birds heralded the dawn, I knew this was only the beginning of a long and perilous journey, where every note played would shape the future in ways both wondrous and terrible. The parchment felt heavier in my hands than its worn weight warranted, as if the words inked upon it bore the gravity of all the years we had lost. I sat alone in the corner of my chamber, the air thick with the scent of melting wax and aged wood, candlelight flickering against the stone walls. My fingers trembled slightly as I unfolded the letter, the familiar yet distant handwriting pulling me back into a past I had tried to bury beneath melodies and ambition. Estryd, my sister, my blood, the one I had not seen in years, leader of a rebel faction that opposed everything I was becoming. Her words were sharp, yet threaded with an aching sincerity. She spoke of the dangers the forgotten tune posed, of the tyranny it could unleash if wielded without heed. Her voice, though silent on the page, resonated with the fury and fear I remembered from our childhood. "Eryndor," she wrote, "your music once healed wounds between us, but now it threatens to silence the hopes of many. I beg you to remember who you are beneath the song." The rooms seemed to close in around me. Despite the warnings I had received about the tune, the personal cost was becoming painfully clear now. This letter was not just a plea, it was a challenge, a mirror held up to the man I was becoming versus the brother I once was. Leora's footsteps echoed softly as she entered the chamber, her keen eyes immediately catching the letter in my hand. Without a word, she took the seat beside me. The warmth of her presence a stark contrast to the chill of estrangement that surrounded my thoughts. "She's reached out," I murmured, voice barely above a whisper. Leora nodded, her expression unreadable but steady. "This changes things. We must prepare for what this means, not just politically, but personally." Her words struck a chord deeper than any I had played. The melodies that once brought me solace now lay tangled with the discord of family and fate. As night deepened, memories surfaced unbidden, sunlight filtering through leaves, the sound of our laughter mingling with the rustle of the forest. We had been inseparable then, to voices in harmony. But the years had composed a different song, one of distance, misunderstanding, and conflicting dreams. Could we find a way back to that harmony? Or were we fated to remain dissonant notes in a world already fraying at the edges? I rose and moved to the window, the twilight sky a canvas of fading fire and tentative stars. The letter's final words echoed in my mind, a refrain of hope and warning intertwined. The forgotten tune called to me still, its melody a seductive promise of power and peril. And beyond the glass, the world waited uncertain, fragile, and bound by the threads of our choices. The path ahead was shrouded in shadows, but one thing was clear: the music I wielded was no longer mine alone. It was a song shared by fate and family, a refrain that demanded I face not only the kingdoms and courts, but the sister who still haunted my heart. I folded the letter carefully, feeling the weight of a future unwritten. The silence of the room filled with the stirring notes of a new, uncertain melody. The tavern was dim, the only light spilling soft amber hues from a single candle flickering lazily on the worn wooden table between us. The murmurs of late-night patrons faded into a dull hum, as if the room itself held its breath for what was to come. Leora sat across from me, her posture rigid, eyes fixed on the dancing flame. For nights, I had sensed a storm behind her calm facade, shadow she carried silently, refusing to share. But tonight, the weight was too heavy to bear alone. She inhaled deeply, the tension in her shoulders visible as she finally spoke, her voice low and roughened by suppressed emotion. There was a mission, she began, years ago, before we met. A task I led, one that went horribly wrong. We were to secure a village rumored to harbor rebels, opposed to the magical rulers. I believed in the cause, then believed I could protect my comrades and the innocent. But the enemy was stronger, and I failed. Her fingers clenched into fists on the table, knuckles white beneath her rough gloves. We walked into an ambush. Many didn't make it back. I was the only one to escape. The guilt, it's never left me. The room seemed to grow colder. I reached out, hesitating just a moment before placing a hand over hers. The surprise in her eyes was fleeting, replaced quickly by a fragile vulnerability. "Leora," I whispered, "you're not alone in this. We all carry scars that shape us." A silence stretched between us, filled only by the soft plucking of my lute as I absent-mindedly strummed a slow, mournful melody. It was a tune I had been crafting, a fragile thread of hope woven from the remnants of sorrow and longing. Music had always been our language, our bridge over the chasms of pain. She allowed herself a small, weary smile, the first light in what felt like a long night. "Thank you, Eryndor, for listening, for being here." Our conversation meandered through memories and regrets, but also through hope and resolve. I shared fragments of the forgotten tune's growing power, the whispers of ancient harmonies that promised both salvation and ruin. Leora listened intently, her fierce spirit rekindled with each word. As dawn approached, we moved from the tavern to the quiet safety of my chamber. Maps and letters lay scattered across the table, each mark a thread in the tangled web of political intrigue and looming conflict. Rival factions vied for control, and King Maldron's shadow loomed ever larger. We pored over every detail, crafting strategies that blended Leora's tactical mind with my knowledge of the tune's subtle magic. Outside, the world stirred awake beneath a pale sky. I caught the faintest strains of a distant song carried on the wind, a reminder that music was never truly silent, even in the darkest hours. Later, beneath the silver glow of the moon, Leora stood alone on the balcony, her auburn hair braided tightly, her green eyes sharp and unwavering as she methodically sharpened her blade. The quiet scrape of metal on stone was a stark contrast to the harmony of my lute, yet both were expressions of the same fierce loyalty. She glanced back at me, a silent vow passing between us. No matter the cost, no matter the shadows that sought to consume us, we would stand together. The forgotten tune was more than a melody, it was a burden, a weapon, and a hope, and we would guard it with everything we had. The night deepened, and with it, the unspoken promise that whatever trials lay ahead, we would face them as one. The war for the song's power was only beginning, and in the quiet of that moment, I felt the first stirrings of a bond that might yet rewrite our fates. But even as hope flickered, a chill lingered, a reminder that some shadows never fully fade, and the past's haunting refrain could still strike the deepest chords of our souls. The tune awaited, as did destiny, and so did the darkness. I tightened my grip on my lute, steeling myself for the journey ahead. The melody was no longer mine, Alone it belonged to all who dared to listen, to fight, and to survive. And in that knowledge, I found a fragile strength. The night whispered promises and threats alike, but I was ready to face them, for the song, for Leora, for the fragile hope that could yet rise from the ruins of our past. The dance of melody and shadow continued unceasing, relentless and utterly alive, and I would not falter. The first notes of our next chapter were about to be played. The night pressed in close, the shadows in my chamber thickening like a shroud around my weary form. I sat hunched over my lute, the strings whispering back to me the faintest fragments of the forgotten melody, a tune that had begun to feel less like a song and more like a living thing, writhing within my bones. My fingers trembled, numb and uncooperative, as if the magic I coaxed from them demanded a toll far beyond mere fatigue. Each note was a shard of ice, cutting through the haze of exhaustion clouding my mind. I closed my eyes and tried again. A single note, pure and clear, hovered in the air before fading like a breath lost to winter winds. I gasped, clutching the lute tightly, my breath shallow and ragged. The room spun, the stone walls tilting as though the vanished civilization whose ruins I had glimpsed in dreams was leaning in to watch, waiting to judge me. The melody's curse was no longer a distant warning. It was a claw sinking deeper into my flesh, sapping strength and will alike. A quiet knock broke the silence. Eryndor Leora's voice was steady, a lifeline amid the storm. I managed a weak nod, and she entered, her presence a balm to my fraying nerves. Her eyes, sharp and unwavering, scanned me with a mixture of concern and determination. "You pushed yourself too hard again," she chided gently, kneeling beside me. "You need rest." I shook my head, the stubborn fire of ambition flaring despite my body's protests. The tune, I must understand it, control it, at what cost? Her voice softened as she took my trembling hand in hers, grounding me. "You're fading, Eryndor. We cannot protect the world if you wither away." Her words cut deep, but I could not yet relinquish the melody's intoxicating power. It whispered promises of dominion, of order in the chaos that had claimed my family and shaped my path. Yet with every performance, the price grew steeper. My dreams were no longer safe havens, but battlegrounds where shadows of a forgotten past clawed at my sanity. That night, sleep came fitfully. The visions returned with relentless clarity, a city of silver towers bathed in twilight, crumbling beneath the weight of silence. Voices, ancient and mournful, echoed in a language I could almost understand but not fully grasp. They spoke of hubris and ruin, of a melody that tore through the very fabric of their world. I awoke, drenched in sweat, the echo of their lament seared into my mind. At dawn, a pale glow filtered through the narrow window. Melis appeared as if summoned by the melody itself, her silver hair shimmering like starlight against the pale light. She spoke softly, her voice a riddle wrapped in wisdom. "Power without balance is a flame that consumes its bearer. The song you carry is a double-edged blade. Wield it with caution, or be undone." Her words struck a chord deep within me, the flicker of hope amid despair. There was a path beyond destruction, but it required sacrifice and understanding I had yet to attain. As she faded into the morning mist, I felt the weight of the forgotten tune settle heavier on my shoulders. The days that followed were a relentless march of performances and recuperation, each note draining more life, each silence growing louder with the threat of oblivion. Leora's protective watch never faltered, her strength anchoring me when my own faltered. Yet beneath her steadfast exterior, I sensed the growing fear, not just for me, but for the fragile balance of the world itself. The burden deepened, the melody winding tighter around my fate. I could feel the tune's cold grip squeezing the last vestiges of my vitality, and still I played on. For in the haunting desperation that consumed me lay a single, stubborn truth. The song was not just power, it was the key to a future I could not yet see, and the price I was willing to pay to shape it. But how long before the music silenced me forever? The night closed in once more, the lute resting quietly in my lap, its strings humming faintly with a promise and a threat. The forgotten tune was no longer just a melody. It was my curse, my salvation, and the haunting refrain that bound my soul.